Hello everyone, it's Mr. E here today, and I'm talking again about Path of Exile 2. Sorry all my Darktide viewers, I promise the next video is about Darktide, don't you worry. This is a video about my experience with getting to maps, which means I have indeed completed all 3 acts of the campaign twice. I didn't particularly relish it. It was a pretty nice campaign. By that I mean the story was very coherent, and I liked the sort of world-spanning adventure it takes you on. The zones are very pretty, the bosses it puts you up against are extremely cinematic, etc., etc. All that stuff is good. It's mostly about the length of these campaigns and some other irks that I've had with a few. Generally, I think it was mostly glitches along the way. So let's first talk about the length. Listen, I am a slower player. I do not, what's the word? I can't focus when it comes time to grind out maps or grind out progression towards getting maps on the first couple days of a league. So when I entered into this, I already told myself that, hey, you know what? I'm not overly focused. I'm not speed running. I'm not intent on like, oh, I need to get to maps by tonight, 7 hours maximum. That was never part of my plan. However, I'm sitting at 55 hours, and we have to assume that I probably did AFK quite a bit, and I probably had at least my computer on overnight at least one time. But all that together does not account for more than probably 15 to 20 hours. Even at the most crazy assumption, 35 hours is way too long. Even for a slower player like myself, that's still way too long to get to what's considered endgame. And I fully understand they might be trying to tailor this experience to more players who are picking up this game for the first time and are just looking for a campaign experience. They probably will never even touch the end game content. They're just like, oh, I want to see a cool story. I want to be powerful. Kind of like ARPGs used to be, right? It's just a story that you went through, and when the campaign was done, the campaign was done. But for a lot of players, myself included, the real game starts at the end game after the campaign is concluded, and so that pressure to get there, especially coming from Path of Exile 1, where it was much quicker to get there, and generally a little bit more fun to get there, yeah, it's just a really, really slow-going experience. And I attribute that to, one, that in the first sort of act, or act is the wrong word, the first trio of acts before you enter into cruel difficulty, you have very little player power to speak of. It might spike up a little bit when you get your first ascendancy, and then again when you get your second ascendancy, but outside of that, Jeweler's Orbs, until this latest patch, were very rare to come by, and so you would have a lot of skills that were still sitting at where the same place they were when you picked them up, at having only two support gem slots available. And that, in combination with the fact that there are no movement skills in the game, excepting a few at like higher levels, means that your way of getting through lots of monsters, because you have low damage and because these monsters can very easily hem you in and kill you, instead of like in Path of Exile 1, where if I had a situation like this, I would just flame dash and I would get out of there and I would just move on. I would just skip past them and get to the objective that I'm looking for. But in this game, because the monsters will catch you and they will body block you and kill you, and if you do get killed, all the monsters in the map respawn, you can end up wasting a lot of time in maps where you just mess up in a single combat encounter and it causes you an accidental death, and then you have to clear the whole area again. So there's really not much way to like skip through maps, and that is multiplied by the fact that these maps are absolutely fucking huge. They are easily 2 to 3 times the size of any map that even, endgame maps that were in Path of Exile 1, and I think that's really cool and all. I like that there's these big expansive areas that can have lots of monsters to fight and loot to find, if there was loot to find. But it is so annoying when you're trying to progress a campaign mission and you have to run all the way to one corner of the map and hope to God that the waypoint that you need to find is in that corner, because if it isn't, you're running all the way back to where you were and then off to another corner, because some of these paths are very long and winding and have one specific way through them. So you'll see here, I spent the whole time we've been talking here wandering. How long has this been? However long the video. Check the video length right now. I beat that boss, and then I spent that whole time in that I've been in here wandering around looking for that small soul core. And when you know, last place that I checked. But the amount of times that last place you checked is going to come up when you're in the campaign gets kind of frustrating, because it is a lot of like fetch questy stuff. And the general rule of thumb for Path of Exile 1 was like, hey, just follow a wall and go all the way around. But a lot of times what I found is that the objectives or the way forward in Path of Exile 2 seems to be somewhere in the middle of the map. And so, yeah, that can just completely screw up your pathfinding. And I've had instances like there's a witch boss in Act 3 who rides around in a little broomstick, and it awards you some spirit for beating her, so you have to beat her. And I had to reset the area because I spent 30 minutes walking around it, exploring every last little nook and cranny. My map was fully explored, and I still to this day don't know where the entrance to her arena was. I thought it was legitimately glitched and just didn't spawn her, so I had to reset the map and try it again, and that took me another like 20 minutes to find her. So just a really, really unfun experience from that perspective of like, if you do pick the wrong path, if you go in the wrong direction, you will either run, you'll just run into nothing, and then you'll have to turn around and walk all the way back, which takes far, far too long. Let's also talk about my problems with the progression systems. Leveling is fine, but ascendancies are problematic because whoever decided that, I know you're listening, whoever you are, whoever decided that Sanctum and Ultimatum need to be part of the Ascendancy process, fuck you. Because Ascendancy, because, what am I trying to say? A Sanctum is bullshit. Sanctum has numerous insta-death mechanics. I mean, generally it has that honor system, which just insta-kills you regardless of your health state. So, that's not something that most players are going to want to deal with, because it's really, really difficult. Like, even getting through just one tier of it, I get that it has to be an earned thing, but Izaro, the ascendancies that you got in the first game, like your first ascendancy was mind-numbingly easy. And this is a hard game, I get that, but the level of challenge that is posed to you by completing one trial, let alone probably the 2 or 3 it asks of you to get ascendancies once you get to the higher difficulties, I say probably, we'll get to that in a second, is just stupid. I just really, really don't like doing Sanctum with those no-hit mechanics, especially because there seems to be a lot of enemies in there. I'm looking at you, Snake mage casters, who have almost zero telegraph, and then they are bursting out of the ground and hitting you. Or you'll get rare mobs that have like Calls Lightning Storm with, again, zero telegraph, and the Lightning Storm has like a random chance to drop on top of your head and hit you. Those sort of things need to go the fuck away and not be part of Sanctum if we are going to have Sanctum be a thing. So that's an issue. Ultimatum also has its own set of issues, mainly that, like, it's supposed to be like sort of like an end game thing, and it really seems overscaled. I attempted one of the second tier of Ultimatum to get my other ascendancies, and it just didn't happen. But let's talk about ascendancies, bugs with ascendancies right now, because I happen to have a bunch of Barya to use on the Sanctum ascendancy, so I could get my 3rd ascendancy. But my quest state is glitched, so I actually can't access it. I have beaten the Jinn, and she has vanished, and she dropped her 1 guaranteed Barya, and then I can't get the access. The people in the little sandcrawler won't talk to me to initiate the quest state where I can drive the thing to the temple. And I went to the temple that I already have discovered, but it's the level 22 version that you get to in Act 2, and when I ran the Barya through there, it gave me no additional ascendancies, even after completing 2 tiers of Sanctum, which was like ripping my own eyes out. So that was a huge waste of time, and I'm very frustrated by that. So I'm not going to spend any more until I get word from the developers that it's fixed. And I just have that quest, like, look for more information about the trial, just sitting in the top of my bar too whenever I'm in the Act 2 zone. And then the other problem that I had was that so therefore I can only ascend by doing Ultimatum, right? I need to get the inscribed ultimatums, and I have managed to find 1 so far that is, once I was in the second area. And my game fucking crashed. My game desktop crashed when I was in the first zone of that ultimatum. So I instantly lost it, and I haven't been able to find one since because they are not tradable and they're not craftable. There's no way you can target find them. So that has really, really irritated me. But overall, I think this has been a good experience. I think that the game is really fun to play. It's very snappy. It's very responsive. I like that I can actually see the feedback of, I'm actually dodging these enemies. I'm positioning myself in such a way that I don't get crowded in on. Because so much of Path of Exile 1 was just, I'm just gonna off-screen this huge-ass horde of enemies and they'll all die in one hit to ice shot or whatever it is. And then, I got killed in exactly one hit, but I have no idea by what. That was really frustrating. I also enjoyed the fact that you can see on the map all of the things that are in the storyline that will award you bonus quest points, because that is something you will definitely need to know. It's way better than the Path of Exile 1 system for that. So there are lots of positive things here, and the game is really, really fun to play. I didn't have that bad of a time playing through it. It was just that there reached a certain point where I was like, okay, I'm ready to be in maps now. And after 50 hours, I'm really, really ready to be in maps, and I'm ready to move on from doing this campaign thing. So here's my recommendation to GGG. Certainly they're listening. Everything in Act 1, just cut its health values by 30%, and that will make it so much better. Make the maps 30% smaller to Act 1 and 2 for that matter. But yeah, in Act 1, when you have so little damage, everything just takes way too long to die, and you're using only 1 or 2 skills, so it's super boring anyway, because you just don't have any cool abilities to style on the enemies with. So go ahead and just cut those health values so that it's a little bit snappier and you can actually progress through it. It shouldn't be hard in Act 1. It should really start spiking up in Act 2 is what I firmly believe, or the second time through the cruel difficulty. And about the build, I think the build is shaping up nicely. I'm starting to rely more and more on Ball Lightning, because Ball Lightning has a really great chance to shock. So I have a bunch of shock proliferation and increased effective shock on the ball. And that means that these enemies are getting dotted up and having 40% increased damage taken. And then I actually just reached the level where my elemental storms have 4 slots for support gems, so they tear some shit up. And what I've been doing, this is actually before I reached that level, but what I've been doing is using the Ball Lightning first, because the Ball Lightning shoots a lot of hits out, and so they all have a decent chance to get a crit. And when it does get that crit, it spawns a storm. So a single ball can spawn all 3 or 4 storms, like you'll watch here, just spawn a storm without having to cast some of these slower casting skills that can spawn multiple storms at once, which is really nice, because then the enemies just stand in them and they just cook. And then we can use our larger arc attacks to burst bosses and all that stuff, like you saw at the beginning against the Chimera there. But that's it for me, guys. I hope you I've been enjoying Path of Exile 2 as much as I have. Like I said to my Darktide fans, next video will be about Darktide, so hope you can wait till then. Anyway, that's it for me for the day. I appreciate you. Go play Path of Exile. It's a fun game despite its flaws. Hope it gets sped up a little bit. And peace, Mystery out.